Let's go to this story as well. The number of dog attacks recorded by police in England and Wales has risen by more than a third in the past 5 years. Last year, there were nearly 22,000 cases of out-of-control dogs causing injury. That's up from 16,000 recorded back in 2018. Overall, it's a rise of 34% during a time when the UK dog population is estimated to only have risen by 15%. So there's a disparity to look at there. Police say they've seen more reports of dangerous dogs as a result of specific work by specialist officers. The National Police Chiefs Council, the NPCC, says that forces across the UK have been focusing on attacks. Let's speak with Denise Nuttall, who's a dog behaviour expert. Afternoon to you, Denise. I mean, it's often said there's no such thing as a dangerous dog, only dangerous owners and all the rest of it. I'm not sure that's quite true, but I broadly understand the point that people are trying to make. Why do you suspect there's been an increase here? Are the police just finding more cases of this, or what's going on?
No, I think I'm certainly seeing more cases in my workload. I think a number of factors are at play here. One is that many people got dogs during COVID. Now, I know that the numbers of dogs have only increased by 15%, but those dogs that were bought through the COVID pandemic seriously lacked socialisation and training.
Yeah.
And that is, we know that's significant. We know it's really important to socialise dogs. There's a limited time in which you can do that. It's not something you can catch up on later. But also where the puppies came from. Pre-pandemic, when somebody was looking at buying a puppy, they would go round to the breeder, they would see the puppies, they would meet the mother dog.
Yep.
But during the pandemic, it was actively forbidden to do that. So people were not allowed to go to the breeders, and that really left it open for unscrupulous puppy farmers to meet up and just deliver a puppy.
Yeah.
We know from scientific research that pups that are reared in puppy farm settings or even sold in pet shops in other countries are much more likely to show problematic behaviours, including aggression.
Why do you think? I mean, I was fascinated, Denise, by the fact that the pandemic and the lockdown was pretty grim for all of us, and when we were stuck in our homes, and it was quite hard sometimes. I know the weather in the first lockdown was largely quite good, and that might have helped, but I mean, the idea, we got a puppy at the end of last year, so I know, having a puppy in your house is just like having a mad person in your house for sort of at least 6 or 7 months, isn't it? It's like, they poo and wee everywhere, there's, they nibble away, and they're gorgeous and lovely and all the rest of it. I mean, the last thing I would have needed during lockdown was a puppy, so, because that's a huge responsibility, and perhaps, I don't know, was it boredom? What do you think was going on that prompted people to choose that particular moment to go and buy a dog and to buy one from a rogue breeder?
Well, I don't think people realised they were buying them from rogue breeders. I think people thought, who may have considered having a dog, thought, well, I can have a dog now because I'm working from home. They weren't looking long term. And the problem is that puppies don't tend to show aggression.
Yeah.
The aggression tends to manifest itself when the dog becomes an adult. So, you would think, well, why didn't we see these numbers increase in 2019, 2020? Because the dogs weren't adult then. Yep. They're now in adulthood, and we're starting to see the consequences of the chronic lack of socialisation that's occurred. I mean, particularly territorial aggression, because people didn't have people coming around their houses, so dogs didn't get used to this.
That's a very good point. So there's another layer to this as well, because of the lack of socialisation that a dog might ordinarily have got. What's the answer, Denise? I'm sure there's not one catch-all answer to this, but how do we begin the process of, almost forget training the dogs, training potential owners to think, well, firstly, you might want to look twice at where you buy the thing. But I would also add in, and I'm sure you'll confirm this, you need to make darn sure that you have a lifestyle that's going to be conducive with raising and having and owning a dog. And if it's of a certain type, it'll need more exercise than another type. And all those boxes need to be ticked, right?
They do. I mean, when you're going to get a dog, you have to say, your first question is, how do I want this dog to fit into my life? What do I want this dog for? And if you've got a busy family home and you've got lots of people coming in, you're very social, then you're probably not going to want a dog like an Anatolian Shepherd, for example, which is a guarding breed of dog, who hasn't been accustomed to this during the puppyhood, because not only are they not wired to readily accept people because they are wired to guard, they haven't had that early socialisation, which may have mitigated against some of those guarding tendencies. and they go, they go according to type. So if you're going to get a dog, you have to ask yourself, what do I want this dog for?
Sure.
That's the big question. And you need to make sure that when you choose a breed or a crossbreed, that you understand what those breeds were bred for.
Yeah.
Because that's going to influence their genetic tendencies to express certain behaviours.
Absolutely spot on. Denise, listen, we're short on time, but thank you. That's thorough stuff. Denise Nuttall, who's a dog behaviour expert, she specialises in aggression. And what she said there was absolutely bang on. I mean, idiots usually are the people that buy those dogs because they want the dog to look aggressive. That's part of the point. I was watching, talking to Panorama, maybe Gary Lineker's next job, but a Panorama thing on the puppy farms and the breeding of those dogs that still have, they say it's not that kind of dog, but it kind of is a little bit of that kind of dog, and they're able to circumnavigate laws and regulations around the breeding programme because they don't actually have a breeding process there. They self-inseminate, is that the right word? The dog. I mean, they interviewed a guy who literally, he does the work on the male dog in order to then have the sperm to impregnate the female dog. And that process means you're not breeding in the same sense. It's a curious business. And essentially you're flogging dogs all over the place for thousands of pounds a time to people who know very little about dogs and live in completely inadequate accommodation to deal with dogs. I mean, it's woeful all round, but that's at the centre of this, isn't it? It's the types of dogs people want to buy and the kind of people that are buying them. And if you're not checking, and if a dog's costing you, if it's way too cheap, there's a reason for that. Checking out the breeder, etc. So that's one of the answers. I think that's probably the biggest answer in this conundrum as to why we've seen an increase in dog attacks. Thickos owning dogs, right? There's the headline.